Disclaimer. This content is created based on my unprofessional opinion and analysis of related topics just for social communication purposes, to expand our mutual domain of views by discussing and analyzing the matters. The source of information and evidence for this content is social media, which contains facts, rumors, hearsay, and some other fragments that there is no proof for their authenticity or accuracy. So please pay special attention. There is no claim on the reliability and confirmation of the conclusions presented here.
Because of the crucial role any indictment has in the final verdict on which a person's fate is ultimately dependent, some fundamental criteria must be considered for the judgment to be fair and reasonable. One of these criteria is the methodology of gathering documents, processing and analyzing the pieces of evidence, and finding logical and relevant sequences between the matters in a way that would make it hard to conclude the case differently. In other words, a collection of information, facts, and evidence must be combined to interpret and narrate a specific logical chain of events decisively. Any neglect in processing the case correctly may lead to irrecoverable damages to an individual's life. The necessity of adhering to professional, fair, and meticulous standards of investigations becomes more critical in cases with death penalty convictions. The history of justice hasn't been proud of perfect and flawless records across all times and spaces. There have been many cases in which innocent people have been wrongly convicted and spent many years behind bars, or even possibly their entire lives, under the name of justice.
Of murder.
I'm an innocent man, Your Honor, and I have always been an innocent man.
While living in Brooklyn, New York, Bunn was only 14 years old when he was arrested by NYPD detective Louis Scarcella. Bunn later spent 16 years behind bars and then 11 years out on parole, where he still fought to prove his innocence. Then finally, his conviction was overturned based on the wrongdoing of Detective Scarcella and the fact that there wasn't even probable cause to arrest Bunn in the first place.
I want y'all to know that y'all convicted and had a wrong man in prison.
And after 27 years of fighting to clear his name, he is finally exonerated.
I want to say thank you, Your Honor, because in 27 years, I've been fighting for my life.
But before he leaves the courtroom, he has a moment with the judge. Bunn later filed a lawsuit against the city of New York and Detective Scarcella. This is David Ranta. He spent 22 years behind bars for a murder he did not commit. In Brooklyn, New York, Ranta was arrested by Detective Louis Scarcella. Yes, this is another wrongful conviction that's connected to Scarcella. Ranta was put in a police lineup run by Scarcella and was identified as the shooter. But decades later, reportedly, the key witness revealed that the detective had provided him with a description of whom to pick in the lineup. There was no physical evidence linking Ranta to the killing, and the evidence presented to the jury was allegedly fabricated. Ranta was then convicted and sentenced to 37.5 years to life in prison. But after spending over 2 decades in prison, the former witnesses admitted that they were pressured into testifying against Ranta. And now, this is the moment his conviction gets thrown out.
Mr. Ranta, to say that I'm sorry for what you have endured would be an understatement and grossly inadequate, but I say it to you anyway. The defendant's motion to vacate the judgment of conviction is granted.
After his handcuffs were removed, he hugged his family. With all he owned thrown over his back, he walks out a free man. After his release, he reportedly received $2 million from the state and a $6.4 million settlement from the city of New York. This is Susan Mellon. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole, based on an untruthful testimony. She was 42 years old when she was arrested in Los Angeles, California, at a McDonald's while taking her daughter to get a Happy Meal. But that was the last time she would see her child for 7 years, as she was charged for the murder of an ex-boyfriend.
You are under arrest now for murder.
I wouldn't do that.
Mellon's conviction was based solely on an informant who claimed that Mellon had confessed the killing to her. She was in prison for a total of 17 years, until the informant was proven to be a pathological liar and an unreliable witness. And now, this is the moment that Mellon's case is finally overturned.
The judgment is vacated, the conviction is overturned, and as to Ms. Mellon, the case is dismissed.
From tears in one moment to jumping in joy the next. When released, Mellon took her daughter to McDonald's to deliver that long-awaited Happy Meal. The state of California awarded Mellon $597,000 in compensation, and reportedly, the Los Angeles City Council agreed to pay $12 million to Susan Mellon. This is Daniel Villegas. He spent 18 years in prison for a double homicide he never committed. In El Paso, Texas, Villegas was arrested at 16, where an El Paso detective reportedly threatened him with beatings and the death penalty if he did not confess. And the teenage Villegas signed a confession that was prepared by the detectives. He tried to withdraw his confession a few hours after, but by then, it was too late. He was charged with 2 counts of capital murder. With the false confession being the only piece of evidence, the jury was unable to agree on a verdict. Villegas had a retrial and the jury returned a guilty verdict, and he was given a life sentence. After spending 18 years in prison, the verdict was thrown out, and Villegas remained out on bond where he got married and started a family. But now, we're in the 3rd trial.
If the defendant will please stand.
This is the moment that Villegas will find out if he'll go home with his family or be sent back to prison to serve his life sentence.
The state of Texas versus Daniel Villegas. Verdict form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
Villegas is now a free man.
You are no longer under any conditions. You are free to leave. Thank you.
Reportedly, Villegas has filed a lawsuit against the city of El Paso. This is Ricky Jackson. He spent over 39 years in prison for a murder he did not commit. Jackson was arrested at 18 years old, living in Cleveland, Ohio. The main witness in the case was a 12-year-old kid named Eddie Vernon, who in fact didn't see anything. And he said the police did pressure him into testifying against Jackson, which then later led to his conviction. Jackson initially was sentenced to die in the electric chair. But after spending 2 years on death row, his death sentence was reduced to life in prison. Nearly 4 decades later, the now 52-year-old Eddie Vernon came forward with the truth, stating that he never saw the murder happen. Charges against Jackson were then dropped, and after being wrongfully imprisoned for 39 years, this is the moment that Jackson hears that he is free to go.
Mr. Jackson, you're going to be free to go. Life is filled with small victories, and this is a big one. I wish you good luck. Thank you.
All right.
Jackson is now outside for the first time as a free man. Jackson received $1 million in compensation from the state and an additional $2.65 million for lost income.
It is because we are all human beings, and our judgments don't follow a fixed pattern called instinct. Our judgments can swing between our emotions and our logic. In case of lack of mindfulness, we can mistake the distortions of our emotions and our logic for a fair judgment, while in cases where our judgment affects another human being's life, there is no place for the least of doubt or ambiguity in processing the cases. One of the factors that could have control over our emotions and logic is mainstream media, which has a big power to shape the public thoughts and feelings, and consequently, their judgments. The Idaho 4 case is one of the best examples in this regard. The combination of 2 factors, first, the gag order, which has prevented factual information from being released to the public, and second, the boundless and wild social media has created a field of controversies. Of course, we can't prevent or expect society not to judge, because it is part of human nature to have challenges in mind on the matters that happen outside of his own life. In my opinion, the problem with the mainstream is due to its false status as a reliable source of news and information among the people, which causes some people to believe this source unconditionally. Most of the controversies in Brian's case are the result of a lack of proper oversight in mass media program dissemination. I can't figure out why the judge, court, or the general law system hasn't put any restriction on mainstream programmers and their programs while he has issued a gag order on Idaho 4 case. At least for me related to this specific case, it has been proved that not all people's concern is justice. Many individuals follow such cases for their benefit. Unfortunately, we are living in a world where there is no guarantee that all human interactions to be made based on virtuality, and sorrowfully, in an era in which unrestrained technological advancements have overstepped many spiritual, material, and ethical boundaries. So, how can we be confident of the integrity of the judicial decisions in our societies, while the needed restrictions not being applied to confront social and technological interference in the law? I think that, in the law field, societies won't benefit from applying rules and restrictions to maintain the integrity of justice unless every possible disturbing factor that may potentially violate the fairness of a case is predicted and taken under control. Isn't it the first and last goal of the gag order to ensure a fair trial to be held by limiting prejudicial publicity, protecting privacy, maintaining confidentiality, and preventing the release of sensitive information? Now let's watch some fragments where we witness the subtle infusion of someone's thoughts and emotions in the public's minds.
Let me rephrase, Liz. You described 2 plastic surgeries that Brian Kohberger has. Both of them, I believe, were related to removing flaps of skin left over from the 100-plus pound weight loss, a flap of skin and tissue that went down over his private parts and his lower stomach. He wanted to get rid of that. And when he did get rid of that through plastic surgery, he had a serious buff body, is the way I take it from your book. Is that what happened?
That's exactly what happened.
Is it fair or ethical to mess up others' lives and pasts to get some information to gain more attention for our benefit? How far do you permit yourselves to go, Nancy? How much should a person be immoral to bring up someone's most private matters, like talking about his genital or private parts on social media, which has been universally wide? How inhumane it is to cross the boundaries of someone who has no chance to reply. Why not talk about your and Mr. Bloom's abdominal and genital part transition? Any single individual would face the problem of the flap of skin when losing weight, so why not try to attract more attention by discussing your parts? But you have to be mindful that what you present about yourself must be factual and documented. So, you should present evidence of what you share about your private parts, because, unlike Brian, who can't even reply to any fictional and fabricated information attributed to him, you are free to act and speak in defense of yourselves. Now let's take a look at another example.
Have secrets too, and some of them have hid just how terrible they really are. From accusations of inappropriate behavior to bullying guests and outright bigotry, here are a few news anchors who are actually pretty terrible people. Nancy Grace. It's not every news anchor who has a section on controversies that takes up half of their Wikipedia page. But Nancy Grace is not every news anchor. She once reported on true crime and had a bit of a problem of assuming absolutely everyone was guilty. Rushing to judgment means she often gets things wrong. She was humiliated when the Duke lacrosse team was acquitted of rape charges and was wrong about who kidnapped Elizabeth Smart.
You were afraid, I assume.
Yeah.
But perhaps the biggest stain on her reputation is her dealings with Melinda Duckett. The 21-year-old mother came on Grace's show just 2 weeks after her 2-year-old son had been kidnapped. Grace automatically assumed she was guilty and berated her with aggressive questions for 20 minutes. The next day, Duckett shot herself. Grace did not feel the least bit bad about what she did.
But to suggest a 15 to 20-minute interview caused someone to commit suicide, I feel is focusing on the wrong thing.
Grace even went so far as saying it was guilt and not the interview that drove Duckett to take her own life.
Now let's take a look at another example.
So Brian was 19 years old, stole his sister's phone. Don't know which sister. Was it Melissa or Amanda? And then charges were sealed because Pennsylvania has a first-time offender program. That's interesting, right? Family problems, family drama, right? Stealing his own sister's phone. What type of brother would steal their own sister's phone? Why would he do that? And did he do it? Or was this just an accusation and charges got dropped? Or was there some sort of conviction but can't see the conviction because it was a first-time offender? But interesting that Kohlberger, if it's true, and he did get some sort of conviction maybe, or even an arrest, how was he able to even be like an intern or apply to be a police officer, work with the police in Pullman, or study criminology to work law enforcement when he's stealing phones from his own family? I wonder what his sister really thinks about him. Which sister do you think it was? What was in that iPhone for him to steal? Why would he want that phone? From his own family members. Who steals from their own family members? Really, seriously, who steals from their own family?
And now another one.
We are going to tell you about such a strange person. We are talking about Jonathan Lee Riches. He's called the most litigant in the world. This young man filed his first lawsuit against his mother in that lawsuit. He said his mother has not taken care of him well. He won this case and he got compensation of $20,000. After winning this case, the young man filed a case against his friends, neighbors, relatives, fiancé, police, judge, famous companies, and even George Bush. So far, the number of cases filed by him in different courts has reached close to 2,600. Jonathan Lee Riches' name is also recorded in the Guinness Book. You will be surprised after knowing that. Jonathan Lee Riches also filed a lawsuit against the Guinness Book of Worlds. He said why was his personal life written in the book. Without his permission, he has won close to $8 million in damages and compensation in the cases so far. After all this, he was called to a TV show where he was asked, "What is the reason that even after so much fame, you are living alone and there is no one to love you?" He started laughing and then got up from the TV show. After that, the young man also sued the TV channel for his dishonor. He then received compensation of $50,000. Follow for more.
And now another one.
What the federal government subjects me to. I was a perfectly clean-cut white boy, and then the federal government destroyed my life, more or less. They put me in prison for a non-violent crime, served 125 months illegally.
On JLR. There's a lot out there that many people don't know about. Thankfully, his history, his lesser known history, has been saved by several media outlets, but also Twitter accounts that have followed him for that, like I mentioned before, different Twitter accounts, that have followed him for a long period of time, keeping track of all of his disgusting behavior. So, of course, this is going to be extremely cringy. You're going to watch as he is proven a... This is that man. What do you think those men are going to say when they see these videos? What do you think that the men and the wife that he doxed, this man doxed a wife. This is him worshiping the people that took these lives. Minutes did. Thank you, Cherie. This is him. People pay him. People give him money to harass families of tragedies. This is the man that just cowered before those men lying to them. He's really up there punishing them. He has told people that he's going to become one of these men, a serial you-know-whatter. I didn't even know that it was the same guy when I started to talk about Molly. I was blown off my chair when I found out that I had been debunking this lying, manipulating, exploitative just evil demon all the way back all those years ago. And now here we are again, and he's out there getting paid. YouTube is allowing him to sit on his channel and profit off of this garbage. Look at this. He fantasizes sexually about the serial you know what-ers. He fantasizes sexually about it. He tapes the faces of these child killers to infant dolls. God knows what he does to those poor dolls. God knows what he does when the cameras aren't rolling to those dolls. He has one of his weirdo friends recording him. This is what he's done his entirety of his life. He goes and finds serial, you know what, people that hurt and kill others, people that go missing, and he does this. His entire persona right now is a lie. Everything he's doing to be media and a reporter and make money is a lie. Telling people that we mass reported because it works on weak-minded people. Not a lot, thank God. See what else we got here. Oh my God in heaven. The men that have this guy in their neighborhood need to go show the police officer this.
Jonathan Lee Riches. And recently, I had a female that was staying and living with me. And she left. And this morning, I went into my dresser to clean it out. And you will not believe what I found. Here, let me put some gloves on here. I got some gloves. You will not believe what I found inside my dresser. But if you look closely, these are a pair of panties. Look.
He can't stand women. He can't stand women.
What is that?
He can't stand women. He has an issue with women.
Looks like shit stains or something on these panties. Absolutely disgusting.
Now, you see a few examples of how mass media facilities are used by some individuals with such records and backgrounds who claim justice against a person whose guilt is not proven yet. There are many more examples of people whose maliciousness can impact the public judgment about a person, regardless of factors like corruption, perjury, and collusion, which are themselves crimes committed by specific individuals involved in the case. The main reason for the public's misjudgments is the lack of mindfulness and passive acceptance of mainstream influences. Since the jury members whose verdicts are the last word in determining the fate of the accused person are from the very community itself, the mainstream role should be taken very seriously, especially in cases that have been prolonged too much. It is possible to keep several individuals as jurors in quarantine for several days, but it is almost impossible to keep them isolated and apart from people for more than some days. And in a case like Idaho 4, I don't think there could be anyone in a justified and qualified place for being selected as a juror whose mind hasn't been involved in the case as a member of the society. The longer a case is, the more influenced by the mainstream and the public. These influential effects issues could be more intense and serious among the local population. So, as a non-expert person who hasn't any knowledge of judicial law, but as an ordinary individual whose mind has been involved in this case, I'm wondering, is it possible and practical for the trial to be held in the local court and for the jury to be selected from other states? This way, at least, there could be more control over the interference of the probable unintentional prejudiced feelings or biased sentiments of the local jurors. At the same time, the demands of both sides have been considered. The trial is held at the local court as the prosecutor's side wants, while the jury is selected from a non-local pool as the defendant's side wants.